Who are the best linebackers in the NFL today? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another BLV NFL rankings video. And in this video, I rank the top 32 off-ball linebackers in the NFL entering the 2024 NFL season. The off-ball linebacker position, in my opinion, is the most underrated in the entire sport. They have to cover. They have to stop the run. They blitz. They do it all for a defense, and that's why I want to represent them with a top 32. Before I do, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more BLV rankings just like this, and let me know in the comments your opinion on my list. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Let me know in the comment section below. And let's kick it off with the 32nd best linebacker in the sport today. That is Devon Lloyd of the Jacksonville Jags. Devon Lloyd was drafted to be a stud linebacker, and he's ascending, man. He's on the come up. I believe that Devon Lloyd definitely had a huge improvement in 2023, and I think he's going to skyrocket in 2024, which is why I have him at number 32. It's that breakout position, that breakout player on my rankings. I think Lloyd inside Ryan Nielsen's defense, that's going to leverage his ability to pass rush, which was really one of his essential traits coming out of college, I think is going to make him a really disruptive linebacker. We saw him get a lot better in coverage in year number 2. We saw his run defense really rise to an elite level in many statistical measurements. I think Devon Lloyd is an athletic, well-sized linebacker that's going to become a Pro Bowl type of player in short order. Devon Lloyd's really talented. He was 13th in tackles, 2nd in PBUs, thanks to those long arms. And he was also top 20 in PFF grade. He was 16th. So Lloyd is definitely on the come up. Look out for him to have a huge breakout year in 2024. At number 31, Kaden Ellis of the Atlanta Falcons. And yes, Kaden Ellis does have a funky last name in terms of his spelling. I'm not sure why he has 2 L's and 2 S's in the name Ellis, but regardless, Kaden Ellis is actually one of the more underrated off-ball linebackers in the NFL, and he actually just played under Ryan Nielsen, a defensive coordinator that I just brought up for Devon Lloyd and why I think Devon Lloyd's going to get better. Kaden Ellis was picture perfect in terms of his execution, and he's seen as one of the Falcons' defensive leaders, despite a large majority of the NFL fan base not really recognizing him as such. But Kaden Ellis, 11th in snaps at the position. He had 4 sacks. He was 16th in passer rating allowed, so he showcased an ability to cover. He was 20th in PFF grade, and he was also 2nd in pressures. So his ability to be productive in the passing game is why he belongs on this list. He's also a young player who's up and coming. He's somebody that was taken from the New Orleans Saints, and Nielsen really liked him, wanted to shift him over to the Atlanta Falcons and make him the leader of that linebacker position. The Saints have seemingly had a lot of very good linebackers, and they haven't been able to keep them all, but this guy has been one of the best to come out of there from, the Saints defenses over the last couple of years. I think that Kaden Ellis is an absolute machine when it comes to blitzing, finding those lanes to get to the quarterback, and he's a missile downhill. Really good tackler, just sees, I feel like, the protections really well, is able to get after it. And I think that he is, in terms of that high leverage area of the sport, playing the pass and coverage, playing as a blitzer, an extra man in the pass rushing situations, the simulated looks, he's really essential. Now, I am intrigued to see how he's utilized under Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris utilized Ernest Jones in potentially a similar fashion to how Ryan Nielsen utilized Kaden Ellis. So I could see him used in a similar fashion to Ernest Jones as that extra pass rusher. So it'll be interesting to see how he's utilized in a new scheme. But I think he deserved the shout for his production in 2023, one of Atlanta's most underrated players last season. At number 30, I have Jahlani Tavai of my New England Patriots. Tavai was one of the best graded linebackers in the NFL last year when it comes to looking at his grades according to PFF from a coverage perspective, a pass rush perspective, and a run defense perspective. There were few linebackers that were actually as good and as consistent in all areas of the linebacker position as Jawan Tavai, which is shocking to me because I've never really been a huge fan of this player. I thought he was too slow. I thought he was unathletic. I just didn't think he fit the modern game. But last year, he completely proved me wrong with his production and his play. He's just one of those players that he's not the most athletic. He's not the quickest. He's not the fastest. But he's always in the right position. He sees things very well. He reads things very well. And he utilizes the skills that he does have, his size, to his advantage as a linebacker. He allowed the 5th best passer rating in the NFL, and he was actually 4th in overall PFF grade. Jawan Tavai is capable of doing pretty much everything that New England asks their linebackers to do. He can play on the edge and set the edge against the run. He's able to blitz and get after quarterbacks. He's also able to do a pretty good job at flowing in coverage, which he showcased last year at an elite level. So Tavai is a really sneaky good player that I don't think gets mentioned in this conversation enough. At number 29, I've got Ivan Pace Jr. of the Minnesota Vikings, an undrafted free agent from last year's NFL draft class. He was an instant success for Brian Flores, and Brian Flores was a former linebacker himself, so he understands what he sees at that position at a high level. And Ivan Pace just is one of those guys that is reckless, has a physical style of play, and he's willing to get his body in kind of awkward situations to be able to make a tackle or to be able to disrupt a block. He's also really smart. His instincts are off the charts. He is going to be the leader of the middle of this defense, of the defense. He's going to be the green dot guy for years to come for Minnesota. He feels like he fits Flores' system really well in terms of those downhill linebackers that are able to disrupt the run game, but also, able to play instinctively in coverage to cover running backs and things like that, take away screen passes, flow to the football hard and heavy, and he's impactful when he hits you. So Pace is not like a really outrageous athlete. He's not super fast, he's not super strong or anything, but he's just really good at seeing the field, really good at being in the right position. And the thing that I think is really elite about him is he's really good at, in the run game, like knocking around guards and centers and getting an impactful stop and win in the run game. So 17th in PFF grade, 6th in passer rating allowed, which is really impressive, especially in this scheme with all the different tasks you have to do. At number 29, the rookie, Ivan Pace Jr. At number 28, Drue Tranquill, one of the NFL's most underrated, overlooked, and versatile linebackers. Drue Tranquill reminds me of the Chiefs' version of Kyle Van Noy for what he was of the Patriots. Just a linebacker that can kind of do whatever the defensive coordinator asks him to do in a given week. If you want him to play off ball and really cover, he can do that. He was really good at that with Los Angeles. If you want him to be disruptive downhill in the run game, he can do that. If you want him to play on the edge and blitz and be a pass rusher, he can also do that. So Tranquill, the area that he really improved and really was super impressive last year was actually his pass rushing. He had 5 sacks, 16th in pressures, and 35th in PFF grade overall. Tranquill was a really underrated gem of a piece of that elite Chief defense and had an amazing playoff run, in my opinion, both against the run at setting the edge and also getting after quarterbacks, even involved in, containing Lamar Jackson and things like that, and stuffing the run on the edge against Christian McCaffrey, even at times covering tight ends. Like, he does so many different things at a very high level. Very good player. The only reason he's not higher is just because he's somewhat of a situational player and he's not always on the field. He's also pretty consistently banged up, but Tranquill showed off last year in his versatility at number 28. We thought he was going to be a super underrated signing, and he became that for the Chiefs in 2023. At number 27, Terrell Bernard of the Buffalo Bills. Terrell Bernard, man, had an absolute breakout season in 2023. He was sensational. 13th in stops, 1st in sacks at the linebacker position with 8 sacks, especially in this specific defense, a Sean McDermott attack, a Sean McDermott defense. That's rare. Like, you don't usually see guys have this amount of sacks in this defense. He had 8 sacks. He was 9th in pressures, and he also allowed the top 25 passer rating, 24th in football in terms of his passer rating allowed. So all the way around, right? Made stops in the running game, was able to pressure the quarterback, was able to sack the quarterback. Just a very impactful player. Was able to make a lot of different plays. Even with Matt Milano out, this guy stepped up in a big way to provide some security to the middle of the field, and he'll have to do that to an even greater degree in 2024, as Matt Milano will not be returning until later in the year. So Terrell Bernard, playmaker, feisty guy. I don't think he's the biggest or the strongest when it comes to taking on blocks, but man, that guy just slices in there, and he's really deceptively talented in terms of his ability to blitz and burst to the quarterback on these blitzing plays and these pass rushing situations. So look out for Bernard. He's going to be making a lot of plays in the middle of the field for the Bills defense in 2024. At number 26, one of my personal favorite up-and-coming linebackers in the sport, Christian Harris of the Houston Texans. Big fan of Christian Harris. He was 43rd in snaps last year, but despite that, he still had 41 stops. So Christian Harris really, I felt, he belongs on this list because he, at the end of the year, was really starting to incline. He was really starting to hit his peak as a player. And now you're going to see him in, I think, a good defense, a good front seven alongside Azeez Al-Shaair, who may or may not also be on this list. And you're going to see him, I think, play his best season that we've seen him play. He's got the instincts in terms of the run game. He's got special speed. He's got special movement skills, special fluidity and coverage. And he has a knack for just flying to the football and making crucial big plays. In the game against the Browns, he had, I think, an interception or a fumble return for a touchdown, a big play in that game. And just to me, I just love the way he plays. I love the style. He's very fast. He screams at you when you watch him play just because of that speed. So I think given his ability to cover and move and his ability to track the football in space, he's somebody that could ascend to an elite level of a linebacker at number 26. Excited to see what he can do with DeMeco Ryans in his 3rd or 4th season coming up. At number 25, Alex Anzalone of the Detroit Lions. The Italian stallion Anzalone belongs on this list. I think he's one of the more underrated linebackers in football. Another former Saint linebacker. He was 3rd in pressures last year, top 17 in tackles, stops, and snaps played at the linebacker position. Anzalone is the unsung hero of the Lions defense and run defense. He's also very capable as a screaming blitzer, and he's utilized in that fashion. But I also feel like he is a good cover player. I don't really think he has many holes to his game. I think people just don't think he's very good because of the way he looks, to be honest. I mean, he looks like Fabio out there, so I don't really think a lot of people think that Alex Anzalone is good. But he's good. He's legitimately pretty good. He can blitz. He can cover. He can stop the run. And he's a maniac. I just love the way he plays. I think he also is really instinctive in the pass defense department, where he's able to kind of make some acrobatic type of plays, getting his hands on the ball, in the middle of the field. So, yeah, Anzalone, I think, is the most underrated player on the Lions, and I look forward to him playing in 2024. Absolutely underrated player and a beauty with that hair on the field. Love seeing him play. At number 24, Jawan Bentley of the New England Patriots. Jawan Bentley, speaking of underrated, has been underrated for a lot of years now in New England. 4 sacks, 6th in pressures last season. He is a very good blitzer, but he's very smart. I think that's the big thing that stands out to me with Jawan Bentley. He has very good IQ. I don't think he's ever been the most physically gifted linebacker, even in comparison to other Patriot linebackers like, let's say, Dante Hightower or Jamie Collins. He certainly is not in the same mold of power like Hightower or of speed like Collins, but I feel like he has a good mix of both players. I think Bentley is just in the right situation at the right time. The Patriots defense asks him to do a lot of different things, whether it's come downhill, take on a guard in the run game and disrupt the run and make a tackle, whether it's cover the middle of the field as their linebacker that pretty much plays on all 3 downs, or it's cover a running back out of the backfield, or it's spy the quarterback. Like, he just does a lot of different things. He's capable in all areas. He's not really a screaming player in terms of his playmaking capabilities, except for maybe his pass rushing, capabilities. But to me, he's just, for one of the best defenses, one of the most consistent defenses in football, he's one of their most essential players. He's so important to everything they do, their communication at all three levels. He is kind of like the glue guy between the front and the back. So Jawan Bentley belongs at number 24. At number 23, Azeez Al-Shaair, formerly of the Titans, now of the Houston Texans. Just love his style of play. 6th in tackles, 10th in stops, 6th in snaps last year for the Titans. He really came into Tennessee, and I think he's going to be a huge loss for the Titans this year, because I don't think they really replaced him properly with an capable linebacker of his skill set. I mean, he screams around the football field with his speed and physicality. A former 49er, he plays a lot like a Fred Warner or a Dre Greenlaw. More, in my opinion, Dre Greenlaw. But Azeez is going to be really good, I think, in Houston. I'm really excited for him this year as, the primary middle linebacker for this defense. I think he's got a good combination of speed and physicality, both in the run department and in pass coverage. I think he's especially good at finding the lanes and the holes to be able to attack the running game and running backs in the backfield. He's able to kind of scrape across with speed and physicality and being able to kind of get across an offensive line and make a stop in the run game. I think that's really his specialty, is just his ability to play around the line of scrimmage, his ability to play at that second level and fly to the football. He's just a really, really fun player to watch at the second level of a defense. And I think he probably will have his best season of his career this year in 2024, which is maybe why he gets a little bit of a boost at number 23. At number 22, Bobby Wagner, now of the Washington Commanders. Bobby Wagner still is putting up really impressive statistics and numbers, and the grading systems still love him. I continuously rank Bobby Wagner a little bit lower than other people, just because I think that his production and his play don't necessarily match up. He's a legendary linebacker. He's still one of the best in the game. He's still top 32. He's still a very capable starter. I just don't think that he provides the value that he used to in terms of his speed, in terms of his coverage capabilities, in terms of his ability to, just move overall. I think that Wagner still has incredible instincts. He's one of the smartest players in football, regardless of position. He's a tough tackler. He was 2nd in tackles this year. He was 2nd in stops. He was 3rd in missed tackle percentage, which he was a sure tackler, which is impressive for a guy his age. He was 1st in snaps, which is insane. And he was also 7th in PFF grade. So like I said, his stats are still top notch. I just think he's kind of a little bit unreliable in the pass coverage department. And I also feel like he's kind of like tasked to do a specific role, which I think is a downhill linebacker at this point in his career. But he's still really good at that. So that's the thing. Like, he's kind of been in all these different defenses in all these different areas. Like, he was in Los Angeles, he was in Seattle, he's been popping around. Now he's with the Commanders. For whatever reason, teams don't really want to keep Bobby Wagner around. I think that's because he might be going for too much money on the open market, and teams kind of feel like he's kind of past his peak or past his prime and not really worth the value. I'm not exactly sure why it is, but he's been on a couple different teams in recent years. I think that kind of speaks to that he's not the same player he used to be, but he's still pretty reliable, that all these different teams and these different schemes can fit him in and have him as a starter on the team. So he's slowing down, but he's still really good, especially against the run, especially as a tackler, especially even as a blitzer at times. He can be productive in different defenses and different looks. And I'm looking forward to see how he fits once again in a Dan Quinn defense. It's been a while since he's played under Dan Quinn, but I'm looking forward to it at number 22. At number 21, Germaine Pratt of the Cincinnati Bengals. Germaine Pratt is one of the best, most consistent cover linebackers in football, and he plays a lot alongside his teammate Logan Wilson of the Bengals. Pratt was pretty productive in terms of sacks and also turnovers forced. So he had 4 interceptions / forced fumbles on the year. He had 3 sacks. He was also really good in terms of his coverage. Once again, 13th in passer rating allowed. But he didn't play the most snaps he's ever played. He played 21st in snaps. I mean, not bad, but he definitely has played more in the past. But I think he had his most tackles of his career, if I'm not mistaken. So Pratt didn't like grade as well as he typically does by Pro Football Focus and stuff like that. Typically, he's in the top 20 range. This year, he wasn't really in that range, but I think his statistical production actually was better this year than a lot of other years. So it's kind of one of those weird kind of grading stats, pick your poison there. But Germaine Pratt to me is a really good player. And what I really like about him is I think he's a really assignment sound coverage player. He's also just in terms of he's got a good combination of quickness, lateral movement skills, and also pretty good length so that he's able to cover a lot of ground in coverage. And I think he makes a lot of sneaky nice plays in coverage alongside Logan Wilson. So maybe he's a little bit weaker in run defense at times, but I think that his ability to play the pass, his ability to make big plays in the pass game, whether it be sacks, whether it be, stripping a guy of the ball or it be an interception. I think that's really the value he brings. He's kind of in his prime right now. So at number 21, Germaine Pratt. At number 20, entering the top 20, Robert Spillane of the Las Vegas Raiders. Spillane had a severely overlooked season last year. He was absolutely incredible for the Raider defense. That was one of the most improved last season. I think a big improvement was because of Robert Spillane. Robert Spillane was all over the place last year. If you watched a Raiders game, you would notice Robert Spillane in all aspects. He was 12th in tackles. He was 14th in stops. He had 4 sacks. He was 7th in snaps for linebackers, and he was 14th in pressures. So whether it be an interception here or there, or a big run stop in the hole, a big hit that he made in a game, or a forced fumble, or an interception, or a sack. Like, this guy just was all over the place. Like, there was not a game that I watched of the Raiders where Spillane did not make an impactful presence. And that's what I love about him, is just, he's kind of an old school linebacker. Like, he's kind of bigger, thicker. He's not the fastest guy, but when it comes to playing downhill, attacking the football, he's one of the heaviest hitters. He's one of the best run defenders in terms of just being able to eat up blocks. And he's a sneaky good, improved player in coverage. Like, I think he's a lot better in coverage than I ever gave him credit for in Pittsburgh. And maybe it's the scheme and what they ask him to do, but man, he has really improved in that area. So just very good instincts, very good toughness, just an old school player that really matches the energy of Max Crosby. So at number 20, Robert Spillane. At number 19, Tremaine Edmonds, one of the most talented linebackers in the NFL, did not have his best season in terms of grading or, just overall coverage, just overall missed assignments, missed tackles. He was inconsistent, but he still brought to the Bears some big-time plays and some big-time turnover-producing plays. He had 5 interceptions or forced fumbles this past season, which speaks to his talent and speaks to his high-end production. Edmonds at times has the capacity to be one of the best linebackers in football. He's big, he's long, he's strong, he's fast. He does at times hit the wrong hole. He does at times miss, a guy in coverage or an assignment. And that's the frustrating part about him, is that he's played a few years in the NFL now, and he still has those kind of rookie mistakes. But when he's playing at his best, there are few players at this position that can actually make the plays that he makes. When it comes to his length, getting in the run game and getting by and slipping by blocks, whether it be the amount of space he takes up in coverage and the ability to break on a football in pass coverage, or, even as a blitzer, because he's so tall and so long, he's basically another edge rusher. So there's so many different things and assignments you can utilize him in. You can have him really do anything in any kind of scheme. So Tremaine Edmonds at number 19 is valuable for that fact. At number 18, Logan Wilson of the Cincinnati Bengals. Logan Wilson was 20th in tackles, 13th in snaps, and he forced 6 interceptions or forced fumbles. He's one of the game's most consistent turnover-producing linebackers when it comes to interceptions, and he is one of the smartest coverage players you will see in terms of some of the high-end plays that he makes on the ball is absolutely exquisite. I mean, Logan Wilson just sees the field, sees quarterbacks, sees receiving concepts, and overall the passing game at a very, very high level. He's just an impactful player. He never really leaves the field for the Bengals. He's, in my opinion, not the most physical sledgehammer type of linebacker in the run game, kind of like Pratt. But I think that the area that he's a little bit better in Pratt, he has more responsibility, in my opinion. And he's a little bit more of the general out there, of course. He's more of the middle linebacker. Pratt is a little bit more free to do what he wants. But to me, like, Wilson has everybody in check. Wilson has everybody on the same page. And Wilson is out there just producing. And at his best, I think he's been a borderline top 10 linebacker in the NFL. He remains consistent in terms of his interception production. I think that will continue in 2024. I would expect him to get back to his form from 2022 or 2021 as like a legit top 15 linebacker. He just had a little bit of a down season last year. So he's at number 18. At number 17, Zaire Franklin of the Indianapolis Colts. Franklin finished first in tackles in the NFL last year. He also was 11th in stops, and he was top 10 in snaps, 9th in snaps. Franklin pretty much has replaced Darius Leonard in terms of his ability to be the heart and the soul and the tackling machine of the Colts defense. I don't think he brings the same level of ball production or like interceptions or forced fumble production as Shaq Leonard. He's not quite that good, but I think Franklin is just one of those linebackers that you watch, and when it comes to the run game, he's one of the best in the NFL. He's just screaming. He never gives up on a play. He's always, really pursuing the football at a high level. And obviously, leading the NFL in tackles, that's just a guy that brings energy on every single snap. So you would like to see him get maybe a little bit better in terms of his ball production, his sacks, his pressures, his ability to blitz when he does get those chances. I feel like he also could be maybe a little bit better in terms of his coverage, but I think when it comes to run defense, there are a few that are better in terms of his ability to just flat out run and get sideline to sideline. There's few that are better. So he's really elite in a couple of areas, and that stands out to me at number 17. At number 16, Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah, JOK of the Cleveland Browns. Probably like the unsung hero of the best defense during the regular season last year. JOK was first in tackle depth last season, which means he made, on average, his tackles at the best possible spot on the field, which would mean he's closest to the line of scrimmage or he's in the backfield. So JOK is very instinctive in terms of his ability to slice in, because I think he's a little bit undersized, but he's so quick and so twitchy and so fast that his ability to react to things is just, he's right there and he's instantly making a stop. He was also 12th in stops. He had 4 sacks and he was 21st in PFF grade. So JOK, the thing that stands out is just his ability to move, his ability to be twitchy, his ability to read and react, his ability to get after the football, his coverage skills, obviously because of those skills that he features in terms of his movement, his speed, all that is really awesome. And he's found a way to be undersized at the NFL level and still be a very productive player against the run. His 4 sacks are also extremely impressive for a player that is as small as he is. So yeah, I just think he's really good. He pretty much only needs to just continue to stay on the field, continue to be consistent, continue to show that he's an every down linebacker. This was really his first season of showcasing that. So that's why he's only at 16. But man, this guy could possibly argue that he could become a top 10 linebacker in 2024. So JOK is at number 16. At number 15, Frankie Luvu of the Washington Commanders, formerly of the Carolina Panthers. One of the best pass rushing linebackers, if not the best in the NFL. 7 sacks, 20 pressures. He was 13th in PFF grade last year, and he's been a very productive pass rusher in Carolina the last couple of years. He just struggles a little bit in coverage because he's not the best mover. He's not the best in terms of sideline to sideline capability. He's a former edge rusher, right? So his strength is really getting downhill, eating up blocks, winning in the run game, and then also being a extra blitzer and using quickness, twitchiness to be able to get around centers and guards in his simulated pressure ability. But Frankie Luvu is going to be really interesting in a Dan Quinn system. He's almost going to be Micah Parsons light, in my opinion, with his ability to line up on the edge, his ability to line up inside. It's going to be really interesting to see how Dan Quinn utilizes this guy's skill set. I think, to me, he kind of reminds me of a former Patriot linebacker. Like, just his size is very rare in this modern NFL, that you see a linebacker that plays primarily off the ball that is this big, this large, this long, this powerful, because he is a former edge rusher, but he moves well for that size, which allows him to play at that second level. So Dan Quinn's got a real weapon here, which is what I think Frankie Luvu is. He's just a little bit limited in terms of his ability to do every aspect of what an off-ball linebacker in the modern game does, especially in terms of his ability to be that coverage player in the middle of the field. So at number 15, Frankie Luvu. At number 14, we've got Nick Bolton of the Kansas City Chiefs. Nick Bolton finished top 15 in passer rating and had 3 sacks, and I believe he only played half the regular season for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he was there when they really needed him in the postseason. Nick Bolton, in my opinion, is one of the most complete off-ball linebackers in the sport in terms of, you could see him putting up production in any way, shape, or form. He could put up a lot of tackles in a season. He could put up interceptions in a year. He could put up sacks. Really, he can do pretty much everything. I don't think he's like a superior athlete at this position, but I do think that he reads the game very well. He sees the game very well. He's one of the most instinctive, smartest linebackers in the sport. And like I said, he just has a great level of Swiss Army knife nature, where he could in any given season have like 4 or 5 sacks, have 3 or 4 interceptions, have like 150 tackles. Like, he's that type of guy to me. Like, he is the glue of the linebacking core of the Chiefs, which is one of the most versatile and diverse linebacking cores, right? They have Leo Chanel, who's kind of a big run-stuffing downhill linebacker who sometimes plays on the edge. They have Drew Tranquil, who's kind of like a Swiss Army knife blitzer, also like, you know, the ability to pass rush or even kind of become a coverage player if need be. But Nick Bolton is the guy that he's the general in the middle. He's the run stopper downhill. He's the thumper if need be, but he's also, to me, just more involved in all 3 aspects: pass rush, coverage, run defense. And that's because he's the middle linebacker. He's the guy in the middle for Spags defense that asks a defense and a linebacking core to do so many different things. I mean, that's really the impressive part of the last 2 Super Bowls, is how big of a part these linebackers played in those Super Bowl victories. And Nick Bolton was a big part in both of those. So at number 14, I got Nick Bolton. At number 13, Foye Oluokun of the Jacksonville Jags. Oluokun, to me, is just one of the most fun linebackers to watch because he's so fast and so fierce. Like, he just goes after the football. Wherever the football is, quarterback's got it. He's looking to scramble. Oluokun's taking off like a rocket. He's going to try and get that tackle. If a running back needs a 1-yard run on 3rd and 1, Oluokun's going to just, I don't know, like, do whatever it takes. Get around the block, eat up a fullback, doesn't matter. Oluokun's going to try and dive in there in any way, shape, or form and make a play. I think, to me, he's one of the best run-defending linebackers in football. He's consistently one of the NFL's leading tacklers, and that's what I think really stands out in his game, is he's fast, he's aggressive, and at times that can allow him to get beat in coverage because he's pursuing so quickly, he's reading things so fast that he's trying to scream and make a play every time, that sometimes he over pursues and he gives up a play in coverage, which is perhaps his weakness, as well as the fact that maybe he doesn't produce as many interceptions as other players. His coverage in terms of like making big plays is maybe a little bit underwhelming, but his overall run defense, 3rd in tackles, he was 4th in stops. He was also 8th in pressures. And I think he's a good pass rusher because of his speed. His ability to just hit, a hole in a hurry is wicked. He's really fast downhill. So that combination of being a pressure player, of being a great tackler, of being a run defender. Those are the areas he makes his impact. It's that coverage area that perhaps is a little bit underwhelming in his game, but fifth in snaps, always on the field, always out there, always available, always, bringing the energy to his defense, leading his defense. That's what I really appreciate about his game. So at number 13, Oluokun. At number 12, Patrick Queen, now of the Pittsburgh Steelers, formerly the Baltimore Ravens. Patrick Queen had 4 sacks. He was 4th in pressures. He was also 4th in snaps among all linebackers, which is interesting because a lot of people would argue he wasn't even the best linebacker on his team last year, but he was still 4th in snaps. So Patrick Queen, I think, is really come a long way in his game and his development. I think some people maybe overrate him, but some people I feel like maybe underrate him a little bit because they don't give him the due that he definitely deserves. Queen has improved drastically in terms of his coverage abilities. I think he's improved in terms of just his tackling abilities overall. And he just makes a lot less mistakes than he previously did. I think that he is worth the money for the Steelers just in terms of he is going to bring an athlete to this defense for the first time in such a long time. And I think that's what the Steelers have been searching for. A guy that can flow sideline to sideline, a guy that can be a productive blitzer and pressure guy, a guy that can, cover. Like, he just has all 3 elements to his game at a pretty well-defined level now, and he's one of the best athletes at this position from a well-rounded perspective. He's not too small. He's not like outrageously big, but he's really quick and really fast and really twitchy. But yeah, just his mental capacity has really grown. So Patrick Queen, I think, even ascending now, like, he's still really young. So that's what's promising. Is he had a huge breakout season in 2023 with one of the best defenses in football. The area of strength of that defense was really the middle of the field. It will be interesting, though, how he takes on more of a critical role for another defense where he's not relying on Roquan Smith beside him to maybe be the checks and balances and the leader out there. So he needs to ascend in terms of his vocal capabilities, in terms of his leadership capabilities. But in terms of talent overall, there are few that are better than Patrick Queen. At number 11, TJ Edwards of the Chicago Bears. In my opinion, the best Bear linebacker that they have, and I thought he was really impressive last year. I think he even got better from his peak seasons with the Eagles. TJ Edwards, to me, just every season, what impresses me is he just never makes mistakes. He rarely misses tackles. He's rarely in the wrong position. And that is like the biggest skill you can have at a linebacker position. He's just always fundamentally very sound. And he complements what they do there in Chicago very well in terms of playing a lot of zone coverage. He's very good in space, and his ability to cover is very good. I think you even witnessed the fall off of the Eagles without TJ Edwards and how good and how big of a part he actually was to that defense, because once he was lost to the Bears and the Bears signed him and took him away from the Eagles, they kind of underestimated how essential he was to covering up the middle of the field, making crucial tackles in big moments, and covering tight ends and doing all that sort of stuff. So TJ Edwards, 5th in tackles, 3rd in stops, 4 interceptions and or forced fumbles, and he was 14th in grade. So yeah, across the board, productive in run defense with his stops, productive in terms of forcing turnovers, and also, really fundamentally, his grade stands out. So each year, he's looked at as a very consistent player. I just think in terms of physicality, in terms of game-changing plays, although it was maybe a peak for him last year, he's probably not an elite linebacker in terms of overall talent. He's just one of those guys that he's just very, 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 very solid. So at number 11, TJ Edwards. At number 10, entering the top 10, Dre Greenlaw of the San Francisco 49ers. Greenlaw enters this season, of course, recovering from a major Achilles injury, which he suffered in the Super Bowl, which sucks. Hopefully he comes back and he's healthy and he's ready to rock, but Dre Greenlaw is just one of the craziest linebackers in the sport in terms of his tenacity, his energy, his vibration is off the charts. I think he's one of those players that, people will say that he wasn't missed in the Super Bowl, or people will say that's just an excuse for why the Niners lost. But personally, I think if Dre Greenlaw plays that entire game, especially the way that he was playing in the first quarter or so, the guy was maybe the best player in the entire game to that point. Like, he was absolutely insane in that game. And it's just the vibration he brings, like his energy, his fierce nature to his game, his reckless abandon. He just goes out there and he is physical and he is fearless and he's making tackles, he's making stops. He made some incredible plays in coverage against the Packers in the divisional round. His ability to fly around and make plays in the run and the pass game. Just a really, really, really good football player. And he's the reason I feel like him and Fred Warner, that combination, they're the reason why the Niners have been such a good defense. You know, they don't play a very elaborate style or scheme on defense, but because their linebackers are so fast, they cover so much ground, it allows them to play a pretty simplistic approach in terms of their coverages and things, but they make up for so much of that, and they allow their defensive line to really, you know, get after the quarterback because of all the tackles and the responsibilities that they have. So Dre Greenlaw is so good. He's at number 10. At number 9, Ernest Jones of the Los Angeles Rams, who I think is probably the most underrated linebacker in the NFL. Ernest Jones had 5 sacks. He was 8th in PFF grade, and he was 1st in pressures last year. He's one of the best pass rushing linebackers in the sport, but he's also, to me, very smart. I've always loved Ernest Jones. He's just never really put up this type of production before. I think last year he was flirting with it, but this year it really came together for him in terms of his value to this team, his ability to get one-on-one with running backs and just steamroll them and getting around them and getting to quarterbacks, his ability to be the leader, the vocal guy of this defense, of a young defense, and his ability to elevate everybody around him in all aspects. He's not a bad coverage player, despite being well known for his ability to pass rush, his ability to just make some pass rush moves, get around opposing linemen and running backs and tight ends and whoever's blocking him. Right. And he's really good at coming downhill and being that extra guy in the run fit and making a play as well. So, yeah, just a very complete linebacker. I wouldn't say that he is the best in terms of, he's not that Dre Greenlaw guy where he's going to scream at you in terms of his reckless abandon, his energy, his speed. It doesn't really fly at you that way, but he's just very fundamentally really good. And then also his power, his ability to just have some big impactful pass rush reps, pressures, run stops. That's kind of the areas where I see Ernest Jones pop off the most and really be important to what the Rams do. It'll be interesting to see if they still use him in that way. You would think they would post Raheem Morris. At number 8, Bobby Okereke of the New York Giants. Okereke, who the guy I used to call Okerakwe, I don't know, bro, but we just run with Bobby because Bobby continues to move up this list each and every season. He's number 8 now, and he was 9th in stops, 2nd in snaps, 11th in pressures, and he had 6 forced fumbles and or interceptions. So he put together a complete season. We've seen him before be productive in coverage, and I think he's always been one of the best in terms of his movement capabilities, his ability to pursue the football, his ability to flow from sideline to sideline. He's always been one of the best in football alongside Darius Leonard or now with the Giants. But his production this year in terms of impactful plays, being top 12 in pressures, having 6 forced fumbles and or interceptions, those are the type of things that make you go from a good linebacker that's out there and not producing negatives, producing more positives than negatives and making a lot of tackles and things. But then the next level is, are you popping the ball out in a big crucial situation? Are you providing a pressure on 3rd down when we want to get off the field? Are you intercepting the ball and making a play with it? That's the next level of linebacker for me, and Bobby Okereke has reached that level. So at number 8, I've got Bobby. At number 7, Matt Milano still is on this list despite him getting injured this offseason and playing a majority of last season, or not playing a majority of last season. I was going to be saying he was hurt, but no. But when you look at the games that he did play last year, he played 5 games. He had some of the most outrageous statistics in 5 games. He's probably, when he's healthy, a top 4 or 5 linebacker. But because he's injured again, I only put him at number 7. But Matt Milano had 2 interceptions in 5 games. He also had a forced fumble. So in 5 games, he had 3 turnovers forced, right? He had 30 tackles in 5 games. He also was producing a 38 passer rating allowed. 38 at linebacker is insane. So he's been well known for his coverage ability as one of, if not the best cover linebacker in the NFL, alongside, in my opinion, Fred Warner, right? So he's very good in that aspect, but I also feel like he's always played with a great flow and understanding of the run game in terms of his ability to overcome his size and still make plays in the run game. I think he's been one of the most valuable linebackers in terms of what his scheme asks him to do, how important he is to that scheme in terms of his ability to cover and have range and cover tight ends and cover crossers and match certain concepts, because he's so good at moving around and just making plays in coverage. You know, it's really like having another safety, but then he's physical enough in terms of his run defense where he's really not a liability. So he's a really perfect modern linebacker for Sean McDermott, which is why he's kind of the joker of their defense. He's kind of like the guy that allows them to do so many interesting things. So at number 7, Matt Milano. Disappointing that he's injured. 1 letter off my last name, bro. I wish you well. I hope you come back, and I hope you're great once you come back. At number 6, Quincy Williams of the New York Jets. Last year, I remember watching, and even the year before, I remember watching Quincy Williams, and I'm like, why do people not think this guy is awesome? So now he's finally getting recognition, but Quincy Williams is an absolute demon on the football field. This is probably the most reckless, fast, and reckless in a good way. Fast, no nonsense. I am going to knock your head off linebacker right now in the NFL. Quincy Williams, 7th in tackles, 1st in stops, which speaks to what I just said. 8th in snaps. He was actually 1st in pass breakups, and he was 10th in PFF grade. So he put up a jumble of stats, a nice little collection of statistics in 2023, but this was his real first massive campaign as a linebacker, which is why he's not in the top 5, because the other guys have been a bit more consistent. But him, bro, you can make an argument that he's a top 3 already just in terms of pure talent, but his speed, his quickness, his pursuit to the ball, especially in the run department, is outrageous. He's everything you want a modern linebacker to be in that area of the game. And he's so much fun to watch to me. I hate watching him against the Patriots because he makes those type of stops where you're like, he had the most stops in the NFL, but he makes those stops at a high quality rate. Some of those stops are like, how did he do that? Like, he's on the right and the ball's going to the other side of the field and he runs all the way across the field and he smacks the guy and it's like a nice hit and you're like, bro, can you just stop? But yeah, Quincy Williams is awesome. Love watching him play. I think he is very underrated. So at number 6, Quincy Williams. Entering the top 5, Hall of Famer Lavonte David of the Tampa Bay Bucks. Still playing at such a high level is Lavonte David. 5 sacks. He was 8th in tackle depth, and he was 5th in stops. So the things that really scream at you with Lavonte David are he just really has very few weaknesses. He rarely misses tackles. He still runs really well. And, you know, when you look at an older guy like Lavonte David, that's usually the first thing to go is like their coverage capacity and their ability to run. He might not be what he was at his absolute peak in that regard, but he still covers really well. And I also feel like his ability to blitz, his ability to pressure, his ability to provide sacks in big situations is also ridiculously high. So, yeah, Lavonte David still does it all at a very high level. He's always been one of the best run defenders in the sport. When it comes to not only his pursuit and his ability to see it, but also just his ferociousness as well. Again, an older guy that's still out there making big hits, making big plays, you know, and then his 8th in tackle depth also speaks to the quality of the amount of stops that he makes. So at number 5, Lavonte David is still awesome. Love that player. At number 4, CJ Mosley. In my opinion, one of the smartest linebackers in the league. He has been for quite some time. Last year was probably like his best season as a Jet, maybe, or at least one of them. He was 6th in stops, 9th in tackles, and he was 3rd in snaps. He is, to me, kind of like the unsung hero of the Jets defense. other than what Jets fans would say, but I feel like a majority of NFL fans don't really give him the credit for the elite defense they have, because he's the middle linebacker, he's the communicator, he's the adjuster, he's the guy that, with the Ravens was similar, but played in a totally different system. Like, so this is a guy that was a first round pick, played, in Baltimore in like a totally different, almost like 3-4-esque defense, like a Dean Pease type downhill, style of defense. Now he plays in a 49er-esque defense under Robert Saleh. Like, it's totally different stuff, totally different coverage responsibilities, totally different. Like, he's more of a coverage player now. He's more of a run defender. He's not as much a blitzer or involved in that regard, but he's still a high-end playmaker. Runs better than I thought he did at this point in his career. I think he flows really well, and I just think his instincts, just the ability to be where he needs to be at all times, is just really, really good. So yeah, he's a really, really good player, very consistently. I appreciate watching CJ Mosley play because he very rarely makes mistakes. At number 3, Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints. Demario Davis has been one of the best linebackers in football for a long, long time. And kind of similar to Lavonte David, it feels like both of these guys are a little bit kind of cast to the side as players that have been great for like a decade, but people don't really give them their due. And I think it's because they play linebacker, but Demario Davis, man, there's just not many players like him in terms of his size, his stature, and then also the ability to cover at the level that he does. Like 7 sacks, 7th in pressures, but then also being 5th in reception percentage, and then 2nd in PFF grade. So he's one of the most consistent pass rushers, one of the most consistent pressure guys at linebacker because of his size, because of his length, because of his ability to just be a handful for guards and centers, and at the level that he runs downhill. But then also, I think because of his size and his length and his ability to see the game at a very high level, he's always in the right position in coverage, right? He doesn't really do too much in terms of his ability to move around in coverage. Like, he just always seems to be lurking in the right spot. And Davis really just playing at a peak mentally in his career. So he's getting older, but he's still providing extreme value in the most valuable area of the game, which is the pass game. So that's why I have him at number 3. At number 2, Fred Warner of the San Francisco 49ers, who many would argue is the best linebacker in the sport. I wouldn't really argue against it. I think it's a 1A, 1B type of situation. Fred Warner, I think most consistently over the last few years, has been the best linebacker. He did have 8 interceptions and or forced fumbles last year. He was 9th in pressures and he was 1st in PFF grade. So there's very much evidence that he was the best linebacker last year. I just feel like there was one guy that played a little bit better last year, but that's just my opinion. So Fred Warner, amazing player. I think his coverage speaks to itself. There's just few linebackers that can move and can cover the way he does and is asked to do the things that he does. I do think he's become a little bit overrated in that regard, and I do think that he makes more, like, he misses more tackles than he used to. It feels like he maybe doesn't quite move the way that he did a couple years ago in terms of his coverage. That's just from what I've seen. But there's also games where he's like unreal. Like, he makes some plays where you're like, wow, that was crazy. Like diving interceptions, downhill, just full speed tackles or hits or sacks. He's not too involved as a pass rush player, but that also, in terms of 9th in pressures, that speaks to like how productive he is in those situations. Like, whenever they do blitz, they're bringing Fred Warner. Fred Warner seems to be like a good size, an incredible length, but then also like his lateral agility is off the charts to stick with those shiftier guys in the middle of the field or those savvy tight ends, right? And break in, break out, and he's still able to stay within reach. And he just has a very good understanding of everything around him, and the break on the football is sensational. So a high level of production on the ball last year, a really awesome player, a leader of his defense. There's really nothing that has to be said about Fred Warner. I just felt like one guy was a little bit better last year, and that's where I want to give recognition as my number 1 linebacker to Roquan Smith of the Baltimore Ravens. I think he led the best defense in football. And that's maybe part of it where Roquan Smith was the leader, the middle linebacker of the best defense in the NFL, the most complex scheme in the NFL, the most multi-dimensional defense in the NFL. And Fred Warner's defense around him seemed to degrade a little bit and seemed to not play as well. So that's perhaps the difference between the two, in my opinion. But Roquan Smith, to me, just had a different level of like, he does kind of have some Ray Lewis to him where he has a physicality. He has a it's not your day, pal, type of deal to his game where he is going to beat you up. He's going to beat you down. He's going to hit you. He's going to talk crap to you. He's going to get in your face. And in the run game, he's going to make it known that he's there. In the pass game, he's got rare speed. He's able to like carry up the seam at a high level. He's able to adjust to the football and kind of like run laterally at a high level. His break in terms of, okay, he's going backpedal and then he's breaking is really at a high level. Everything he does is really, really fast, and it's fierce and it's ferocious. He was 8th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He also had 8 passes defensed on the season. I just feel like he does everything well. I think he's more ferocious than Fred Warner. He's more physical than Fred Warner. And I think he probably has to do more because he's in a different type of defense and just a more diverse, kind of schematically challenging defense. But because Roquan is such a great communicator to the players around him, the way that he elevates everybody around him, the way that he plays, the mentality he plays with, the physicality he plays with, I think that's what makes him my number 1 linebacker. Because I think beyond just being fast or being, good against the run or being powerful, like the linebacker position is sort of like quarterback in terms of elevating players around you, getting everybody in the right position, audibling against the chess masters of the NFL. That's something that I think has kind of gone a little bit by the wayside in terms of this position. We used to see that with guys like Jack Lambert, or we used to see that with guys like Mike Singletary, or we used to see that to an ascension of, Ray Lewis, Brian Urlacher, Zach Thomas, even, like all these guys over the years, right? But Patrick Willis was the other name I was searching for. But Roquan Smith, I feel like, is that guy right now, where it's like, not only is he physically special, but mentally, he plays with the mentality I love to watch in a linebacker, but he also plays with the communication level that I love to see from a linebacker. And that's what I think makes their defense the best in the NFL, or did last year. So at number 1, I have Roquan Smith, and that's my argument. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's Mitch of the BLV, and we'll see you in the next rankings video. Peace.